Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome here as we prepare for the fifth race of the fifth season of the Dark Horse Racing Series. Getting ready here tonight for Kansas Speedway to make its debut on the schedule. Some open wheel racing here in the American Midwest. I'm Seth Cole, being joined by Scott Rankin. Matthew Rodriguez is going to be in the booth a little bit later on. And Scott, obviously a lot of top stories coming into tonight. Of course, our first multi-time winner in Matt Wagner last week. Kansas, the first time these drivers going to be taking to this track. But I think the big thing, we touched on this a little bit last week after that event, was I look over on my timing screen and I see a 1 in the column of faster pair. These drivers now having a faster pair, that mulligan to lean on during the course of the rest of the season. And does that change the approach for these guys coming into tonight's race had they not had the faster pair?
Not really. Look, I mean, we discussed it quite at length during last week's broadcast, and that was the critical factor, wasn't it? It was somebody made a mistake, somebody else attempted to move to avoid it, they moved too late, and we lost basically the entire field.
So obviously this is the second mile-and-a-half track that we are going to be at here so far this year, the first one being Las Vegas. Do we look at some of the front runners from Vegas to be the front runners in this one, or does Kansas in its own way kind of bring a couple of drivers that we might not necessarily have seen running up towards the front at Vegas into the forefront of our screens here tonight?
Yeah, look, I mean, yeah, definitely I would be looking at Vegas. Additionally, keep your eyes on Matt Wagner. Remember, his finish at Vegas was compromised very early on due to some unlucky netcode. That's just been a picture of his season up until the last couple of races. Now, let's also talk about something else that is critical and important tonight. They've added an incident point limit. Previously, this hasn't really been a problem. You know, it's ovals, and in particular, it's Indy cars. These cars aren't supposed to be grinding up against each other. Well, they said, all right, well, you guys get the fast repair back. That's fine, but we still want to put some sort of emphasis in place to prevent these drivers from running into each other. What was the solution? Let's come up with an incident point limit. So the incident point limit for a drive-through penalty is 8 incident points. That's only 2 car-to-car contacts. The incident point limit for a disqualification from the server is 12. That's 3 car-to-car contacts. So it is a little bit tight, but ultimately I think it's a good limit, and it's a really, really good starting point for everyone involved in this league, and something that you'll see them drive around tonight.
It'd be interesting to see some of the fallout from last week as well, how it plays into tonight's race at Kansas. Obviously, I'm seeing a couple of names up there towards the top of the speed charts. Luis Gonzalez Nunez had that podium finish last week. We fully expect to see the 14 in victory lane at some point this season. Jari Brubacher had a great run last week. He's up there in the top 5 in speeds, but I think the guy right now that's got the pressure coming into this race would have to be the former champion Nick DeGroot. Last week at DNF at Worldwide Technology Raceway, Matt Wagner, with 2 wins in a row, has eaten into what was a triple-digit points lead for Nick DeGroot after the season opener. It's now 14 points between those two, and so Nick DeGroot's starting to feel the heat a little bit, I think, here as far as keeping himself atop the point standings.
Yeah, look, I mean, he'll be aware of that. Nick's, a very smart driver, very talented driver. He drives to the circumstances, he drives to the situation very, very well. So he'll definitely be aware of that, and he'll be looking tonight, hey, maybe I need a good finish, or alternatively, with the rules change, you might actually see him get a little bit more aggressive. The reason that he might go aggressive is actually, now that he's got that mulligan rule behind him, he wants to push out and just get that good result early. He'll go aggressive early, he'll look to dominate that sort of track position, and then from there, if things go awry, he'll fall back on the fast repair, he'll sit back, he'll be a little bit more relaxed. And you probably see that approach from a few drivers tonight. It does change the approach to racing, but ultimately, I think it's for a better show.
13 drivers scheduled to take part in tonight's 120 lapper. A name that will be familiar to those that have tuned in season after season here of the Dark Horse Racing Series, but not necessarily this season, is the driver of the 31, Julian Altena. We've seen him actually in a number of the Dark Horse Indy 500s, and he makes his first start of the season. How about that? A little bit of an X factor here for these guys to have to compete with. He's top of the board right now in practice. It'll be interesting to see if he follows that up in upcoming qualifying.
Yeah, Julian's actually a very, very talented driver as well. And I mean, this is the right sort of league, right sort of level for him. So he will be mixing it up. He will be right up there and involved with things. He's got the ability. It's just whether or not he can show it off. I mean, a little bit of a hiatus for him, a little bit of time out of the car. He definitely knows what he's doing. So don't by any stretch of the imagination just go, oh, he's first night in this car. He's, going to be way off the pace. That's not going to be it at all. He is going to be right up there, and he is going to be a big factor in terms of contention.
Qualifying about to begin. An interesting trend that we've had here in the last couple of weeks as well is a driver that's hit hard luck the week prior, finding success the following week. I'm looking at a couple of drivers in particular. Gail Brooks didn't have the best of results last week, same for Eric Peterson. And I look at Charles T. I was looking at his stats coming into this race in the first four races, and the thing that jumped out to me the most, 510 laps have been completed in the first four races of the season, and so far, the driver of the number 50 has only completed 192 of them. So is this the night where it turns around for Charles Teed?
To be perfectly honest with you, that guy, we were talking about Matt Wagner's bad luck earlier in the season. If anything, Charles Teed's had worse luck. I mean, the guy is, yeah, look, he hasn't been at the pointy end of things in certain periods throughout the last couple seasons, but he's got the ability to be there when he needs to throw down a good lap. And this is one of the better tracks. He had a great showing last night in qualifying in the Dallara IR18 League. In Area 51, he did a really, really good job there, and then luck didn't fall his way. He spent the entire race basically off the lead lap, and that was just the story of his race, basically. So, look, I think he'll be up for vengeance after last night, and I think if anyone's got the ability to be a surprise factor, it's probably him.
Qualifying underway here at Kansas Speedway. We're looking at the first car out on track. Coming off the runner-up finish last week, Jeff Heisong. Keep an eye on this guy because he's been slowly climbing his way through the point standings. 7th in the overall coming into this one, 73 points out, and we've talked about this week after week with the IndyCar format. As far as the standings are concerned, you can make up that gap in as little as 2 weeks.
Yeah, and that's the benefit. And, you know, again, keep your eye on, like, the quality of the drivers that have had bad finishes. We've seen Nick DeGroot missing out. We've seen Craig Forsyth missing out. We've seen Matt Wagner missing out. But all those names are regularly guys that you'll stick up there and say, hey, these guys are capable of winning races. You know, so don't sleep on them.
So right there, Jeff Heisong going down on the apron on the front straightaway. Now, they can use that in qualifying, but they will not be allowed to go down below that white line during the race. Looking at Jari Brupacher in the 49, who is right now second, now drops to third, and now back up to the top of the board. So right now, he would be the current pole sitter, but there's still about another 6 drivers that are yet to even put down their first lap, including the former Indy 500 winner, Craig Forsyth.
Yeah, these guys will have a late dip at qualifying. They want to see the times that go up there on the board. They want to see what their rivals are doing. They don't want the rivals. Effectively, if they're all out there on track and doing their times all at the same time, it means that their opponents can't go into qualifying with a little bit of knowledge. It means their opponents don't know the number that they'll be trying to hit or have to beat. You know, if they can take a safety qualifying effectively and just underdrive the car by a whole bunch and, you know, come out on top. So, look, it's smart. It means that the guys have got to go out there and they've got to do the best. And we've seen it multiple times this season. Guys fail to put qualifying laps down because they're having to push the envelope, and it's gone awry.
Looking back at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, 3 of the top 5 finishers started up in first, second, and third, but the winner of that race, Craig Forsyth, and third place finisher Jim Brooks started outside of the top 5, 7th for Craig Forsyth, 11th for Jim Brooks. So would this particularly be a track where track position is important, especially with the fact that a lot of times when we come to the 1.5 and 2 mile racetracks, we end up seeing it come down usually to green flag pit stops and pit strategy.
Yeah, look, green flag pit stops, are going to be very, very important. Tire condition, honestly, Seth, is going to be the big factor. Track position, you need to be there and you need to be within the realm of possibility. What that does is that puts pressure on pit stops. That makes the guys not really have the room to have a mistake coming to pit road. And I tell you what, last night, that proved to be the factor. Nick DeGroot had control of the race. Very difficult to overtake. So, the leader of the pack generally has control. And Nick had control of the pack, and he messed it up with a bad pit stop and handed that over to Craig Forsyth. Craig Forsyth never got past, and that was the end of the race for that one. So, ultimately, yes, green flag pit stops are going to be an important aspect of this, but also tires. I think tire wear is going to be, and that seems to be typical of the DW12 outfit as well. Tires, so much easier to put more wear on them in this package compared to the IR18. But having said that, the racing's generally closer as well.
For the moment, Jari Brupacher's 24.404 is at the top and would have him the pole. As soon as I say that, there's the former champ Nick DeGroot up to the top with a 24.398, and with only half a minute left here in qualifying, looks like that's going to stand up as your pole sitter here tonight at Kansas.
Yeah, and that's a good job from Nick de Groot. Remember what I said as well? He was making his run late. He wanted to have a dig, have a dive at getting there late. And he's done that, and it's come off. It's come out in his favor as well. So keep your eyes on that one. Nick de Groot ran very, very strong last night here. Obviously, again, different format of cars. But keep your eyes on him. Forsyth as well as happy. Matt Wagner's on the ascendancy at the moment. There are a whole bunch of guys that are ready to go on this one.
There you see the unofficial qualifying results, which are going to be official here in just a moment. We will show you that starting lineup in just a moment here, as we're just waiting for the qualifying session to become official. Nick de Groot going to capture this pole position, the second of the season, and that puts him as the first repeat pole sitter on the season. He, Matt Wagner, Eric Schaus, and Luis Gonzalez Nunez all had a pole coming into tonight, and now de Groot will be the first multi-time pole sitter of Season 5. 120 laps here tonight, 180 miles in length. We've mentioned, of course, about the faster pair, and based off of Las Vegas, expect to see these drivers going anywhere from 30 to 40 laps on the tank of fuel. It can be very interesting when we get to the closing stages of this race as to whether or not, with the fuel window open, whether they decide to short pit, whether they decide to stay out a little bit longer. We ended up seeing at the end of, I believe it was the Auto Club race, the season opener, a big call by Nick de Groot, pitting as late as he possibly could, got him the victory. Bear with us for just a moment here, folks. We're going to step away Mike's side, try and fix a slight issue, and then we'll be back here for the start of the race here tonight at Kansas. Field rolling off behind the pace car as these drivers getting ready for this evening's festivities. As mentioned, it's the first time that these drivers have been to the Kansas Speedway. Obviously, it's not the first time that they have ever raced on this circuit with the open wheel cars, but it's the first time they've done it under the Dark Horse banner. As here's a look at your starting lineup: Nick de Groot and Jari Brupacher in row number 1. Row 2 going to find two-time winner Matt Wagner and Charles Teed, who really needs some good luck to come his way. AJ Hobson and Gail Brooks, they're going to be in row number 3. Row 4 finds Julian Altena and Jeff Heisong, last week's runner-up. Craig Forsyth and Jim Herrick, they're going to complete row number 5, and they were the 10 drivers to take time. Luis Gonzalez Nunez, Joseph Morales, and Jim Brooks complete the 13-car field for this evening's race. The Dark Horse 180 is underway at the Kansas Speedway. Obviously, early on here tonight, it's going to be the inside line that will be the shorter way around the racetrack. Everybody that's going to be at the front will be trying to get down to that white line, but Matt Wagner would like to be the first one to lead a lap here tonight. Not going to be able to do it. Half a car length advantage for Nick de Groot. He's going to complete lap number 1 with the nose of his number 89 out in clean air. He's got AJ Hobson behind him. Meanwhile, Wagner and Teed trying the longer way around the racetrack. They're going to lose some positions, and they might fall back into the clutches of Julian Altena. That's the bright blue number 31, third on that inside line, who will now tuck into 4th as Matt Wagner, not sure if he had a moment there through 3 and 4 or not, but he ended up losing a lot of momentum. Might have slid up there a little bit in 3 and 4, and was running in 4th, now all the way back to the 8th position. Another driver that's made an early exit to the back was the outside pole sitter, Jari Brupacher. He dropped from 2nd all the way back to 10th, and we're only 3 laps in, so obviously trying to preserve his equipment, and that's something that we've been talking about pretty much the entirety of the season so far, because these drivers didn't have a faster pair to fall back on. They had to make sure they kept their equipment at 100% to be around towards the end. Don't necessarily have to do that now. They could be a little bit more aggressive in the early stages. Then again, big talking point last season when they had the faster pair was probably didn't want to have to use that faster pair until probably the second half of the race, if at all, at least until final restarts. And so we'll see if that strategy comes back to fruition here for the remainder of Season 5. All strung out here, all the way back to around the 10th, 11th position is now Charles Teed. Will jump to the outside. Not going to be able to make a move there on AJ Hobson just yet. Obviously, as the night goes on and more drivers run up on that top side, more rubber is going to be laid down, and more grip will be available. Ultimately, we just need to see, our races have trended very similar in the last 3 to 4 weeks, in the fact that we had the early cautions, we then went into long green flag runs, and it would seem like we'd get to about maybe 30, 40 laps to go, and we'd have a caution come out that changed up just when we thought we had the strategy of the race all figured out, a yellow flag would change it up again. You have to wonder if now that the faster pair has come back into play, if that is going to change those trends, if we're going to see something entirely different race than what we've seen in the beginning of this schedule.
Oh, real talk. I mean, faster pairs definitely make you a little bit...
Oh, we got a wreck! Julian Oltena back there. He collected up Craig Forsyth. And I hesitate to say it, with the 27 involved, we've seen it 2 out of the last 3 weeks. You have to wonder if maybe Gap Whack came into play once again. Craig Forsyth, Canadian driver, has had to deal week after week with some rather, I don't want to say unorthodox, but kind of take you by surprise internet, where you don't know exactly what it's going to... There you go, there's a good word.
It's not Comcast, but it could be worse.
Let's go back and see what exactly happened here. These two were battling around the 4th or 5th position, and almost wonder if we're going to have an identical thing of what happened to Matt Wagner back at Las Vegas. No, that one was a little bit closer, but I think there certainly was space between the 27 and the 31. Craig Forsyth was pushing up the track there. Oltena might have been coming down a little bit. Obviously, we will use the helicopter camera, which gives us the best view of whether there was space between the left front of the 27 and the right rear of the 31 car, but I think it's pretty safe to say, little classic case of gap whack there, and Forsyth took a bit of a wild ride as well.
You got to think, at the moment that one of these cars is a little bit out of shape, it's almost like a lawn dart headed for the wall, and there's not really much you can do but just kind of hold the steering wheel and just try to land for something soft.
Both drivers very fortunate that there's that runoff there on the back straightaway. Helps to slow the car down. If it was grass, it would not slow the momentum or the speed of these race cars, and neither one of them hitting the inside wall. I would be worried about the underneath suspension on that 27 catching air the way it did and then landing back down on the racing surface. There's a look at it again, and the more I look at it, even with the chopper cam, I'm not necessarily certain that that was gap whack. I think there was clear contact between those two. But again, it's the gray area of a mile and a half where one driver pushes up, the other driver tries to turn down to not hit the wall off the corner, and both drivers, both race cars want the same piece of real estate.
Absolutely. It looks like Craig Forsyth has used a faster pair, so that immediately takes his faster pair completely out, and it's a long race to use a faster pair within the first 10 laps, so it's an interesting strategy.
A little worried if you're Craig Forsyth using a faster pair this early on. It is only a 13-car field, and it is somewhat spacious here at Kansas Speedway. So, the odds are in favor of you still being able to make it to the finish with your car in one piece. But And again, expect the unexpected when you climb into a cockpit of a race car.
Absolutely. We're going to step away quickly and see if we can go ahead and resolve this doubling mic issue. We'll be back right after this.
Green flag back in the air here at the Kansas Speedway. Nick DeGroot, AJ Hobson, Charles Teed, the top three as they head for turn number 1. To Matt's point, Craig Forsyth used his faster pair, and Julian Altena also did as well. So 2 of the 13 drivers already a faster pair in the hole. We haven't even completed the 15th lap of this race. The top 3 have broken away, with almost a second gap from Charles Teed now back to the 4th place running Jim Herrick, who has his hands full with Luis Gonzalez Nunez. This restart, very big for the new livery on that number 14. Nunez did not lay down a lap time in qualifying, started back in the 11th position, and now in the span of the first 15 laps, he's picked up 6 spots up into the top 5.
Absolutely. And Kansas has to be one of my favorite tracks for this car and for this package, just because it's the closest I think we'll get really to a banked super speedway in this series, where it's not Daytona Talladega, and obviously Auto Club is a type of super speedway on this, but not with that much banking. This really has you focus on getting down to the bottom of the track and fighting for your spot.
Little interesting that Nick DeGroot last week decided not to lay down a qualifying lap. He ended up starting at the back of the pack, got caught up in an early incident. At that time, they did not have the faster pair, so his evening was over early. Completely different here this week. He made sure he laid down a qualifying lap, started on the pole, and he's tried to keep everybody in his rearview mirror. Obviously, keeping an eye on Matt Wagner in the 6th, back in the 7th position, only 14 points between those two, and to kind of give people an idea of what 14 points is position-wise to these guys, well, let's say, for instance, that Matt Wagner would go on to win this race. That means that Nick DeGroot, to keep the points lead, he would have to finish in 2nd place. He would be 1 point back if he finished in 3rd. When you get up there to the top of the finishing results, the point standings gaps are much bigger than when you're further on down the running order.
That's the scary part, because I think we still have a couple or maybe 1 or 2 points, double points races this season, if I'm correct.
And you would be correct on that. I believe Michigan is a double points race, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe the season finale at Indianapolis is also a double points race. So definitely some big ones there.
It is so those double points races just equalize it. Where hey, I managed to finally get a race and a half gap. I wrecked on a double points race. My 2nd place just won the race. Well, now I'm in a giant hole.
And we ended up seeing just how important those double points races are in the case of Nick DeGroot, winning the season opener at Auto Club, had a triple-digit points lead over the rest of the field, and it's slowly been whittled down week after week after week. So I think he'd be eyeing one of those double points races again to be able to grow that points gap. But I think even more importantly now, the gauntlet's been laid down by Matt Wagner, being the first repeat winner on the season. Nick DeGroot, in his Dark Horse Racing career, has never had only 1 win in a season. So he's looking to keep the streak alive here and having at least 2 wins in each one of the seasons he's taken part in.
You know, that's funny that you mentioned, because even during his, I guess, statistically worst season, he was still winning races. It was just he didn't have the consistency to follow through on it.
And that's a big thing that he talked about back during Season 3 when He ended up losing the championship to Robert Maliska III. He had the wins, to your point, but he said if he just had the consistency, might have been within striking distance in the season finale. How about Jim Herrick there in the 40 car? A driver that we don't normally see up here inside of the top 5. Talked about at the top of the program how drivers that seem to struggle one week, all of a sudden they jump up to the forefront of our TV screens and our computer monitors the following week. Jim Herrick would fit that bill. Only has made, I believe, 3 of the 4 starts this season. Currently sits 12th in the point standings. So, pun intended, look for him to maybe be a dark horse here tonight.
Yeah, and I love a good dose of the Brooks family, and I definitely love seeing Gale run up so high. I mean, obviously, I think he's still got a little bit more in the tank. I think he can claw up maybe to about the top 3 if he really tries, but we got to wait and see.
Keeping an eye on the drivers that had already used their faster pairs. Craig Forsyth has climbed back up to 9th place, but Julian Altener at the moment seems to content to kind of ride at the back. He's even about 0.8 of a second off of 12th place Jim Brooks. So not certain what exactly the strategy is going on there with the 31 car, but it's not going to give him any aid as far as the draft is concerned.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what the strategy is there. Maybe fuel saving, but I wouldn't do fuel saving at that big of a cost.
We're starting to get racy up here at the front. Charles Teed, AJ Hobson, they tried working together on the top side. 2 cars against 1 with DeGroot on the inside line. They're trying to make up ground here on the straightaway, and I think they're doing so, but they lose the ground that they gain once they get into the corner. Look at the move there by Hobson. Cross to the inside of Teed, jump to the outside of DeGroot. He's going to get the side draft and be alongside going into turn 1. Oh, not quite. Has to tuck back in line.
I will say I do heavily enjoy seeing AJ Hobson really up there fighting more this season than he has in previous.
AJ Hobson, 3 starts this season, 2 of those finishes inside of the top 10. He is currently 11th in the point standings coming to this one, though. Lost 3 spots after last week's race at Gateway. Having a great performance here and looking for, I believe, his first win since all the way back in Season 2. It's been a long winless spell for the driver at the 63.
But you got to think the competition that has walked in these doors. I mean, he's went toe-to-toe with the best of them, and really, right now, this is his time to shine.
As those top 3 were battling, I thought we were going to see 4th place on back start to reel them in. They still might. It's about half a second from Charles Teed back to Jim Herrick. And remember, that was almost a full second about 6 laps ago. Gonzalez, Nunez, Gale Brooks, Matt Wagner also there with Jim Herrick. So those 4 cars look like they might make it a 7-car battle up here at the front in the next lap or 2.
I think it's really just a waiting game. I think some of these guys are expecting another caution to come out, but I really don't think the top 3 are expecting another caution to come out. They're expecting, obviously regular fuel strategy, but obviously wanting to go out there, lead laps, get points.
So with that being said, the possibility of green flag pit stops coming up. What do you think about the difficulty for these drivers to get onto pit lane here tonight at Kansas Speedway? Because it didn't look like it was that much of an issue at the last 1.5 miles we were at Las Vegas.
Absolutely, and pit road's always different at every track. The one thing that catches my eye, though, has to be the pit lane. Now, you notice pit lane has that little concrete strip in the pit box. That doesn't seem like too much, but that does affect the grip and stopping power of these cars. Where if you slam on the brakes, you will slide through your pit stall very easily, and this concrete is very unforgiving with grip. I mean, you mistime it, you will slide through your box, so you really have to work on your pit entry, your pit exit, and the stopping in the box.
Been one of my favorite cameras during these speedway races to go on to and kind of see the strategy of how they run, whether it be a 2-mile speedway, 1.5 miles, a mile racetrack. Last week we had 1.25 miles. Riding on board with Jim Herrick. Well, he's not worrying about choosing between 5th or 6th gear. He is 6th gear all the way, getting the draft off of Charles Teed, and had a little bit of a run on them going into turn 1. Looks like he might have lifted just a little bit, breathed the throttle, and letting Teed have about a car length and a half of space.
I do enjoy this a lot more than what I saw in New Hampshire, where it almost looked like there's no give and take. Hey, I'm happy to see some give and take early in the race. These drivers know, hey, there's 120 laps here. This is kind of the 70 lap, 80, 90 lap. Hey, we need to be cutting a little bit of slack here.
Not sure if it'll happen again. I just saw it there off of turn 4. We're going to stay with Herrick here off of 4 one more time. Watch the wheel motion as he comes off that final corner. See if he jerks it back to the right again. Something that people don't really remember here with these Indy cars is the longer the run goes on, the more that fuel cell in the back gets empty and the looser the race car is going to get. And I think that's kind of what we saw there with Jim Herrick a couple of laps ago, feeling that loose sensation and trying to catch the back of the race car.
Well, next biggest thing is not overcorrecting that sensation. I mean, hey, you start the race, this car is planted. The downforce is there. It feels great. Obviously, as you mentioned, as the fuel tank starts to run down, it starts to get a little bit free in the rear. You're not expecting that. But the biggest thing that can upset you and can throw you off here is, hey, a small little bit of the car kind of loses the back end and you overreact to the situation. Next thing you know, you're in that American ethanol back straight wall.
Hobson jumps to the top on Nick DeGroot. Oh, DeGroot's coming to pit road. I thought that Hobson had a heck of a run, but it was actually the 89 slowing down.
What a weird pit road entry. I will admit, I'm kind of surprised he didn't try to duck down more, but I think he's afraid of the back end of the car coming around.
Well, everybody apparently aware that he was coming to pit lane, gave him the room to be able to get down slowly enough to 50 miles per hour. He'll head down to the number 1 pit box and does it all by himself. Of course, leading the entirety of this run means that you are using up the most fuel, so no surprise that he is the first one to start this round of green flag pit stops.
It kind of surprises me, but he has been leading for a little bit of time. It would make sense that he did get worse fuel mileage, but that kind of brings up a big question mark for everyone else, which is, do we stay out longer, try to do an overcut? Because I'm going to tell you, right now, I'm liking the Groot situation if he's running number to number, where, hey, that undercut is strong.
Interesting that nobody came to pit road this lap. Projected they could go about another
AJ Hobson pitting this time.
Okay, so there you go.
Eric's pitting in.
A couple of drivers might be able to stretch it to somewhere around lap 38, lap 39. The Brave might try lap 40. Charles Teed, what a save as that car was all sorts of sideways, and it is again on the entrance of pit road.
I think Teed didn't expect Hobson to slow up that much, slammed on the brakes, lost the back end a little bit, and made another jerk to make sure he was out of the way.
Teed's car is still in pristine condition, but let's call a spade a spade. He wrecked that car twice on the span of turn 4 to the entrance of pit lane. What a great job of keeping that thing out of the inside wall, and really didn't lose any track position as a result either.
Not at all. And again, I want to criticize a little bit of the entry, but man, I think it buffed out. I think you're fine.
Absolutely. Stayed right behind AJ Hobson where he was when they headed for pit lane. That turns the race lead over to Luis Gonzalez Nunez. Gale Brooks there as well as Matt Wagner. No surprise to see Gale Brooks playing the pit strategy. It seems like every week he seems to be the one that's able to stretch it the furthest on what's in the tank, but maybe a little bit more surprised that Nunez is actually playing the long con, as well as Matt Wagner. These are a couple of guys that in the past have seemed to like the undercut.
Yeah, I will admit, I can't speak too much on the pit strategy front since every time I try pit strategy, I get burned. But obviously they know something that I don't. They have a plan that I don't. It sounds like Matt Wagner is debating about coming in. Not sure if he's actually going to act upon that.
Here's the thing we have to remember, too. We look at the number of laps completed, number of laps remaining. Normally in the calculations, you would say, okay, for these guys, they've made it to lap 40. They can make it on one more stop. But we know that the field is going to get somewhat spread out when all these pit stops are completed. So there's no guarantee that you're going to be coming out with a pack and being able to save enough fuel to make it another 40-lap run, especially when we think back to the road courses where we were shocked we saw drivers coming to pit road as early as they did on a run because they had been able to make it another 5 laps further the run prior, but with no draft, you use up all that fuel, so it changes up the numbers.
It's just a strategy game. Everyone's trying to figure out. I think Matt Wagner really has the ability. I think I'm in replay, but Matt Wagner really has the ability to go and pass Gale Brooks up there, but or not Gale Brooks, Nunez up there. But I think he's saving more fuel by just hucking behind him, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Nunez come to pit road and see Wagner hop behind Gale Brooks if he can.
We're looking at the battle for the lead as Joseph Morales hits pit lane, but keep an eye on the top of your screen in the ticker. AJ Hobson runs in the 10th position. Why is that important? because he leapfrogged Nick DeGroot. When everything cycles around, AJ Hobson in the 63 should be the race leader, and he's got over a second between himself and DeGroot, who's in a battle right now with Charles Teed for what eventually might be the second spot.
And investigating that pit strategy a little bit, I mean, it looks like Nick DeGroot actually took about 0.5 extra seconds in pit lane. I mean, his stop was just a little bit longer than AJ Hobson, about 0.2 seconds, but that was just enough for him to leapfrog him.
Well, so far, the speeding police haven't nailed anybody. All 5 drivers that have come to pit lane have made it down to the 50-mile-per-hour pit speed and have avoided having to make an unscheduled pit stop. Speaking of pit stop, whoa, Matt Wagner into the wall. Gonzalez Nunez was coming to pit lane. I don't know if there was a miscommunication, but Wagner has hit the outside wall in turn number 4.
No, I'm hearing some chat over drivers. It doesn't sound like Nunez called out his pit stop, and Wagner just was not expecting it. So he pulled up at the last minute, tried not to kill them all, but obviously, definitely at self-cost there.
And it has dropped Wagner back to 5th. No doubt we will see him on pit road shortly. Now comes the big question if you're Matt Wagner. And you come down as he is now. Do you take the faster pair here and now? How much damage was sustained when he brushed the outside wall? Is it enough to kind of just hang on until the end, maybe catch a late caution and use the faster pair then?
I'd rather take the faster pair now because the time that I would lose with that damage, it's just not worth it. I'd rather take the faster pair, take the risk, still be at the full speed, still be at the full strength. And yep, it looks like Wagner has taken that faster pair.
So make it 3 drivers that have used the faster pair. Gale Brooks stayed out and led a lap. Now he's come into pit lane along with Jim Brooks. Yari Brubacher also down, and that should complete the cycle of green flag pit stops, turning the lead over to AJ Hobson. New second place driver looks like it'll be Craig Forsyth, who's going to have his hands full with Nick DeGroot. So, boy, it'd be so interesting. We're looking at the numbers here you alluded to. There's only about, 0.2 seconds in between amount of time spent on pit road and pit stop, cumulative time on pit lane between all the drivers that eventually are going to be inside the top 5. Be very interesting to see where the time and the track position was made up and or lost. I'm almost wondering if it might have been coming off of pit lane from the entrance of turn 1 over to the exit of turn 2.
That is kind of an interesting point. I don't know really where the point or the time was lost. Just looking throughout the field here, everyone's gotten a little bit spread out. See Charles Teed finally gained his little pack of Gale Brooks now, starting to kind of close the gap here.
I remember Craig Forsyth was involved in the incident back in the early stages with Julian Altena. And so he is a faster pair in the hole, but has done a good job of picking up track position here under green flag conditions. Was running back around the 6th or 7th position when the pit stops began, and now hounding AJ Hobson for the race lead. It would appear that Luis Gonzalez Nunez might have been caught speeding on pit lane. He is on the tail end of the lead lap right now in 11th. Joseph Morales has lost a lap under green flag conditions, spent longer on pit road for what appears to be some repairs. He's in the 12th position, and Julian Altena, that's the blue car you see just ahead there on your screen. He is currently a lap down, about to go 2 laps down. He also had an extended stay on pit lane for more damage repair.
Just looking throughout the field here, everyone, what you may see is everyone racing in line, but I just see a whole strategy game going on, and I don't really know who's going to be victor out of this one.
Yeah, let's remember, too, we ended up having 1 caution early on in this race. I don't think it's necessarily a yellow flag that really throws a monkey wrench into the strategy, but these type of races, the drivers, whether they have a crew chief to do it for them or they are their own crew chief, they work these kind of races from back to front in terms of strategies. So you have to wonder what the next number is in the head for some of these guys, especially Nick DeGroot, who's on an entirely different strategy of most other drivers. Most everybody else, from what we've seen, can go anywhere from 2 to 5 laps further on fuel than he can.
It's part of that, but it's part of your, I guess, poker face, really, which is how much can you make people believe you can go further? Yes, the data says I can make it this far, but honestly, I think I can make it further. And talking yourself up and making everyone else believe that, oh yeah, he can go all the way to X next lap. That's what scares people and forces people into thinking, well, can he actually go out that far? I don't know.
So let's say you're Nick DeGroot right now and you do have a specific number in your head. You just found out that Matt Wagner had that issue with Nunez coming to pit lane, Wagner having to take on the faster pair, right now mired back in 9th. Do you alter your strategy in any way?
See, it's kind of one of those things where it's better to be proactive and reactive, but I think in that situation, I'd rather be reactive. So whatever he does, I would start to amend my strategy to fit with it.
AJ Hobson continues to show the way here. You've got 5 drivers behind, second back through 6. Forsyth, DeGroot, Jim Herrick, Gale Brooks, and Charles Teed. Then it's over 2 seconds, almost 2.5 seconds back to 7th place Jeff Heisung. So right now it is a 6-horse race at the front of the field, and all these drivers looking to find victory lane heading into next week when we get to the tricky triangle of Pocono. And I'll tell you what, we've been there a couple of times during the course of the seasons, and that has been a track that has been an X factor in terms of strategy.
Well, strategy, but also just racecraft. Where, I mean, here's the thing: the tight turns of Pocono, they are not for the faint of heart. Where there has been, I can't remember if it was last season or season before, where we went through about 7 different winners in the course of about 30 minutes. It seemed like no one wanted to win, no one wanted to lead.
An interesting question for you here. You know, you look at the schedule that we've run so far, you look at the races ahead: Pocono, Iowa, Kentucky, Richmond, Michigan, Chicagoland, of course the season finale, Indianapolis. Guess what's conspicuously missing? Road courses. Pocono, I've been told, at least the 3rd corner, very much like a road course. A lot of road course aces like running that speedway because it fits into a lot of the methods that they use to approach corners at road courses. So if you're a driver here in the Dark Horse Racing Series in Season 5 and you like running road courses, which there are none in the schedule, you've got to have Pocono circled, right?
Yeah, and there was the group of guys that hated road courses, and they cheered in celebration. But obviously, some of our road course ringers, some of our guys who are more experienced of road circuits or even street circuits, to be it even, I mean, they were very disappointed in that. But Pocono is a great equalizer where, hey, it kind of blends those two together. Where some of the oval guys are not very good at Pocono because they just are not used to the tricky triangle, and the road guys, they really have a unique advantage while still being at a little bit of a handicap because it's still an oval track.
Halfway through the Dark Horse 180 at Kansas Speedway. It was interesting. I posed the question earlier on tonight. With having the faster pair now, would it change the trending direction that we've seen these races have in the past 4 weeks? I think that I can safely say we're still staying on the same trend in the case of drivers up there in the point standings finding some hardship in the first half of this race. Matt Wagner, the runner-up in the point standings, right now back in the 9th position, and 3rd in the points, Luis Gonzalez Nunez back in 11th. It seems like in the early stages of the races, we have drivers that are up there high in the point standings that run into some early issues and not normally get the second chance to be able to mount a comeback. So again, we're going to be seeing some movers and shakers, I think, as far as the points are concerned when we get into Pocono next week.
Absolutely, and that's kind of the thing where we mentioned about kind of road courses being a little bit of an equalizer. I think the Pocono, like you mentioned, it is a great equalizer where, hey, some of these drivers that have some bad weeks here, they can use Pocono to kind of rebound here. And, hey, it's almost like New Hampshire a few weeks back where I thought New Hampshire was a really good equalizer where it's a flat track, it's hard to pass, really patience is rewarded. And there is a slow car up top. That looks like the 80.
And that would be Joseph
60.
Morales. Yep, 2 laps down now. Way off the pace. Spent about 47.5 seconds on pit lane when he made his green flag pit stop for some repairs.
Well, he's down on pit road now, but it looks like he sped on entry. He was going about 120 hitting that line. That's going to be a 45-second penalty, but obviously for kind of Joseph Morales, kind of in that area, I imagine he's still getting used to these cars. He's still getting used to his track. This is a perfect place to kind of gain experience where, listen, your first season, I don't expect you to just go out, blow doors off, and be competitive. But, hey, use this first season, use it as a little bit of a springboard, gaining that experience, and then moving forward and taking what you've learned.
Gaining the experience and still, though, having a pretty good rookie season. Obviously not having the luck here tonight, but in the first 4 starts of the year, all 4 of those races, he's finished inside the top 10, even had a top 5 run in one of them. So good numbers so far here for Joseph Morales. Obviously here tonight at Kansas, a little bump in the road. He'll look to rebound next week. And all of a sudden, I said it was a 6-horse race. It's all of a sudden turned into a 5-horse race. I'm not sure what happened to Jim Brooks, He lost touch with the top 5 and has fallen back now into the clutches of Jeff Hysong. So I don't know if it was a case of being the last car in line that he lost the draft, or if he might be in fuel save mode here and drop back to maybe pick up the second group, also consisting of Charles Teed and Matt Wagner.
Just looking back here, it kind of seems like him and Hysong were playing leapfrog for at least a little bit of time here. I think they're still playing leapfrog a bit.
Of course, we ended up hearing a couple of weeks ago from Matt Wagner that this is how you make up ground. It's not like in stock cars where you can lock the bumpers and two-car tandem together. You have to have one car go out in front, pull the next car behind out in front, continue to slingshot with each other. That's how you create the speed, create the forward momentum to try and reel in a group of drivers. It's what they're trying to do here, trying to reel in the top 5, and right now on the telemetry, they're not necessarily losing time, but they're not really gaining time either. They're kind of equaling with the top 5 in terms of speeds.
And it's kind of funny in that scenario where this is the only thing keeping you up here, where you want to try something different, but you cannot afford to try anything different, because if you do, you're starting to lose ground. So it's kind of one of those things of, we got to keep doing this to maintain, and I hope something changes.
Now, obviously, I'm not down on the pit box. I'm not crunching the numbers. I have no idea about every single driver in the field, how far they can make it here.
AJ Hobson coming in this time. Nick DeGroot coming in this time.
This is slightly early for these guys, but then again, Hobson has been leading most of this run. I'm looking at the 71 of Gale Brooks, because I'll tell you what, he stayed out the longest on the first run, made it past the lap 40 mark, and he's been the last car, or the second to last car, before Jim Brooks lost the lead pack, in that lead group. He has been the car to benefit the most in terms of saving fuel. I think he can make it on one more pit stop. I think he could make it to lap 80 and not have to pit again for the rest of this race. He might have just played the perfect strategy.
To be honest, I think that's what everyone else is worried about here, is he doesn't have to pit, and that's the kind of the scary part, where I think they're trying to figure out, all right, if we have to do this extra stop, how are we going to plan this that we don't lose time, or are we just going to have to hope and sit for a caution?
Craig Forsyth, your current race leader, he pitted 2 laps earlier than Gale Brooks. The only other 2 drivers that are on the same fuel number as the 71 would be Jim Brooks in the 51 and Jari Brupacher in the 49. We talked about the fact Nick DeGroot may be feeling the pressure of Matt Wagner being the first 2-time winner on the season and trying to gun for the points lead. What about Craig Forsyth, a former winner this season at the mile-and-a-half track of Las Vegas? So trying to go a perfect 2 for 2 in mile-and-a-half tracks.
Correct. And that's the thing, where once you start having that trend of dominating a certain track, you obviously get a little bit of confidence, like, oh yeah, I'm great at these tracks. I'm going to dominate everything on the schedule. And it's that kind of pride that keeps you going.
Kind of interesting, if you look back at that Las Vegas race, Craig Forsyth barely led the most laps, 58 in total to Nick DeGroot's 54 en route to that victory. And not only do you want to be able to pick up wins if you're a driver like Forsyth or DeGroot or Wagner up there towards the top of the point stands, but you also want to get those bonus points. Looking at the bonus point total coming into this one, 25 bonus points for Nick DeGroot. Next closest, Jeff Hysong with 15. That is like between night and day. A lot of these guys that are up there in the top of the points, they got to focus on those bonus points, because those are definitely giving the 89 an advantage as well.
Absolutely, and it kind of opens up that door to, as soon as you have that opportunity, you can kind of work. I think Gale Brooks may be coming down pit road.
Jim Herrick is on pit lane right now in the 40 car. We'll see if Gale peels off this time off of turn number 4. Nope, gonna stay out there behind Craig Forsyth. We're also waiting on Jeff Hysong come to pit lane. And it looks like, oh boy, AJ Hobson nailed for speeding on pit road.
Yeah, I'm taking a look back, just seeing what speed he hit the line at.
Now 3 laps down in the 11th position for the 63 car, and the way things are trending right now, not much chance of getting those 3 laps back to get back into the hunt. That's a heartbreak for a car that certainly was capable of winning this race. Spent a good portion out in front.
Yeah, unfortunately, it wasn't one of those close things. He hit the line at 63 miles an hour, which is kind of ironic, but obviously not what you want when the pit road speed is 45.
Absolutely. So Hobson, big problems there. Going to take him out of the hunt for this victory, and I think it's just going to put more pressure on the rest of these drivers that are still remaining in the hunt for the victory, because for a couple of them, it looks like they're going to have to make at least one more pit stop before the conclusion of this race. So for some of these guys, looks like they might only have to deal with getting it down to pit road speed one more time. The odds are greater of you getting hit with a speeding penalty if you got to come down a second time.
See, that shows you how quick it goes to, man, I hope there's not a caution so I can run out my strategy to, oh man, I hope there's a caution so I can get back in this.
Gotta wonder which drivers are on which side of that argument here. I think Craig Forsyth and Gale Brooks, they certainly don't want to see a caution, because this race is looking like it could be playing into their hands. Matt Wagner there in the 6 car, you gotta wonder what his strategy is. Wagner was a bit of an interesting situation last week, where we kind of wrote him off when he was involved in the early incident at Gateway. He came down, he had a new nose installed onto his number 6, and ran about mid-pack most of the remainder of the race, but then late caution came out, he charged up to the front of the field and was able to pick up second win of the season. We asked him even during the post-race, how in the world were you able to do that? He said, I have no idea. So, you know, he's had his issue here tonight, got up into the wall, had to take on a faster pair, but still a chance that strategy could work out, maybe a caution fall his way. He could still be in the hunt and maybe go for what would be his 3rd win in a row, be the first time
Wagner
ever in his
spins on
career.
the pit road!
No caution, as that's off the racing surface.
Oh, he just got in the apron just a little bit and it hooked that rear on around.
Boy, we're seeing a lot more difficulty getting onto pit lane here tonight than we saw back at Las Vegas. That is for sure.
That's the thing. This pit road, it's deceptive. You think you have enough. You think you're not going to overcook it a little bit. And it's just that hidden thing where you think, oh, yeah, I look at it from a distance. I got this. Finally coming to pit road. Uh-oh. We got a problem.
Only one driver left to hit pit lane, and that is Gale Brooks, who looks like he might be slowing this time. Nobody out the rearview mirror to have to worry about, and makes it safely onto pit lane.
You want to add insult
Now
to injury?
comes the mind games.
Insult to injury. Wagner ended up towing on pit road.
That is going to have him trapped at least 2 laps down according to our scoring. Now make it a 3rd lap. Wow, I'll tell you what, Charles Teed, what happened to Charles Teed? Did he get, I think he got hit for speeding. He's now trapped 2 laps down in the 12th position.
Correct. He got hit for speeding. I'm just going to go ahead and take a look back, seeing what speed he hit the line at. I'm going to have to take a look at all these speeding penalties tonight, see who has the top score for our speeding.
That's Wagner with a spin onto pit road, Hobson and Teed with speeding penalties. They're dropping like flies here with less than 40 laps to go. You look at this lead group
Actually,
right now, and there's...
it wasn't even speeding. It actually was Teed missed the pit road. Lap 67, he ended up coming on to
man.
almost spinning in turn 4, ended up overshooting the pit entry. He would have been fine, but he ended up hooking it left past the commitment cone and thus incurred a 45-second penalty.
You see Teed there. He is a lap down, as is the 60 of Morales, and then the car just ahead of them is the 31 of Julian Altena. So right now, if you look at this group, the only drivers on the lead lap are the 27 and the 71, but don't look now. Here comes the bright yellow 89 of Nick DeGroot. So here's the big question, though, for Nick DeGroot. Came to pit road 16 laps ago, which means he would have to go 50 laps in a tank of fuel. We haven't even seen a single driver go any further than about 40 laps. So he is one of those guys that is on the please let there be a caution side of the conversation.
That's the thing. You've made your bet. It's time to figure out if your bets were correct.
And Matt Wagner has taken his car to the garage. So 2 weeks of elation in victory lane. And tonight he will be finishing at least in the 12th position. Had a chance here tonight to be able to reel in Nick DeGroot for the points lead. And I'm assuming you saw that close 3 wide there through 3 and 4.
Yeah, I kind of got a little bit sketch. Teed apologized for it, obviously, but obviously bad situation. Two guys going at it, and unfortunately, this lap car got caught in between.
Root looking ahead to Craig Forsyth in the 27. Dale Brooks just behind. Jeff Heisung and Jim Brooks are now up in this mix as well. They right now, according to my calculations, would be about maybe a half a lap to a full lap short of making it to the finish, but if they continue to run 4th and 5th here in this lead group, they might be able to save that.
But keyword, you have to work and save it, and I really don't foresee these guys saving fuel here at the moment.
And this is a big break right now for Craig Forsyth. He's not the lead car of this pack. It's actually Julian Altena in the 31, who is currently scored a lap down, but that actually helps Craig in the fact that he doesn't have to use up nearly as much fuel if he were the lead car out in clean air.
Just take a look back here through the pack. Obviously, nice seeing Gale Brooks. Didn't I say he's going to claw his way into the top 3?
I'll tell you what, right now, I think he's got this race. Unless Craig Forsyth is able to make it, which would be close. He is 3 laps shorter on fuel than Gale Brooks is. I don't think Nick DeGroot can make it. I don't think Jeff Heisung can make it. In fact, I really don't think that Jim Brooks or Yari Brupacher can make it. The only 2 drivers right now that I think might have a shot of making it are Craig Forsyth and Gale Brooks. Gale Brooks is a dead lock for me. Craig Forsyth a bit of a question mark. So we'll see how it plays out. Then again, could be doing all this speculating, and we may end up seeing the yellow flag come out and completely throw all the strategy out the window, because there's still 27 and a half laps to go.
Always can change, always can change. But again, nothing short of a caution will change this race. And I can already count on my hand the guys who are screaming like, man, I hope there's not a caution, to, man, I hope there's a caution. I really need it.
I think it'd probably be an even 50-50 in that camp of drivers that want a caution and drivers that don't want a caution. I mean, I'm looking at a driver like Luis Gonzalez Nunez. I think
Nunez pitting in
really,
this time.
Well, there you go. I was going to say he would have needed a caution sooner rather than later, as he was the last car on the lead lap in 7th place and now going to lose said lap. There's the leaders going on by as he makes his pit stop. Matt Wagner, for a brief moment, actually might have been a connection issue for Matt Wagner, because he was off of our telemetry. He lost the 12th position to Joseph Morales, but he has since come back into the server and back onto the racetrack. But he's now 13th, 8 laps down. Looks like unless we end up having pretty big collision here and drivers that have already used their fast repair taken out, looks like he will solidify that 13th position here tonight.
A lot of snaking, a lot of training going on.
Got, I believe, 5 drivers on the lead lap out of 7 in this lead group. The engine and the caboose are lap down machines. Altena in the 31 and Teed in the 50. There's a little bit of a side note in case we did get a yellow flag. Battle for the free pass position is actually going on. Jim Herrick currently holds it by about 0.8 of a second over AJ Hobson. So kind of the race within the race, should we see a yellow flag in these final 25 laps.
I think it hasn't been stated how much Jeff Heisung has improved this season, just off of his basically last few seasons.
Yeah, absolutely. Jumped 2 spots in the standings after his runner-up finish last week, 7th in the overall points, and up here in the 4th position with a shot of maybe going to victory lane. I'm looking at Nick DeGroot running, I should say riding in the 2nd position. By the numbers I've got, he cannot make it on fuel. I'm surprised he's not trying to put a little bit more pressure on Craig Forsyth, forcing him to try and make moves that would lead to some fuel consumption.
Now that's the next big thing, where if you know you can't make it, or you think you're right on the cusp of not being able to make it, do you still continue with your fuel strategy, hoping or trying to buy yourself as much time as possible to try and get a caution? Or do you just say, all right, well, do we just throw that all out the window and I'm just going to go race him, see if I can make him race off his stuff?
And you've got to, if you are able to make it the rest of the way on fuel, you've got to be breathing a sigh of relief right now, because you don't have to deal with what's been a treacherous pit lane entry. Pit lane in general, we've seen speeding penalties. We've seen drivers spin trying to get onto pit road. We've seen some miscommunication with drivers not indicating they were coming to pit lane, leading to stack-ups, and in the case of Matt Wagner, getting up into the outside safer barriers. So pit lane has not been friendly to the drivers here tonight. So for those that don't have to make another visit to that, I think they're pretty happy about that.
Talk about Matt Wagner. I mean, that night has been went from okay to great to terrible and now worse. I mean, he is last car on the lead or last car on track, 9 laps down, and I don't see that changing, like you said, without a wreck or some major wreck without a fast repair.
The one thing that could help Matt Wagner is if Nick DeGroot cannot make it on fuel. Let's say that about 5 or 6 drivers are able to make it on fuel and drop Nick DeGroot down to around the 7th position. Well, in 7th place, bonus points not included, he would only get 26 points as opposed to the 17 points that Matt Wagner's in line for. If DeGroot finishes up inside of the top 10, he's guaranteed 30 or more points. So it would help the point situation for Matt Wagner to at least keep Nick DeGroot within striking distance heading into Pocono, if indeed there's about a half dozen drivers that can make it on fuel and the 89 cannot.
In my mind, it's just, hey, let's try and preserve as many points as possible. Let's just even keep running around. Hey, it's lap 95 of 120. There is still a shot for someone to wreck out. There is still a shot for someone to maybe blow an engine or, hey, speed on pit road and just say, hey, I don't want to continue doing this, and they park it for the night. That is what Matt Wagner is hoping for, just that 1-2 points, just to claw his way back up, because you just need to stay in contention until that double points race.
Right now, Nick DeGroot is in line for at least 4 bonus points, as he has 2 points for getting the pole, a point for leading a lap, and currently holds the fastest lap of the race as well at a 24.187, but he is on pit lane with 16 laps to go.
There goes Nick DeGroot. Now here comes the question. Can Gale Brooks make it?
Well, right now, Gale Brooks, according to what I'm seeing here, if Gale Brooks, put it this way, if Gale Brooks can make it as far as he's made it on the last 2 runs, he's good to make it the rest of the way. If he can only make it 35 laps on what he's got in the tank, he's going to have to pit with 4 laps to go. I think he can still make it, though. I think that he could make it another 14 laps at least. I think he still could actually make it about 16 laps, which would have him 2 to the good. The question is still that 27 of Forsyth, who is 3 laps shorter on fuel than Gale Brooks. He has had the benefit of running behind Altena here under this run. Now he jumps to the outside of the 31, though, as if he wanted to make a pass. Kind of interesting there. Is this him saying, hey, I can make it on fuel now. I got to do everything I can do to defend that 71.
That's the scariest thing of knowing that you're on a strategy you think is going to work, but seeing the guys in front of you and say, hey, I can make it too. And that's the scariest thing, where you have to race, and you know that you cannot just lay back and sit here and get the win off of fuel mileage.
Oh, but I'll tell you what, keep an eye on the 3 drivers lined up behind. Gale Brooks, Jim Brooks, and Matt Wagner. Matt Wagner, yes, is multiple laps down, but he is a teammate to the Brooks. Those 3 could work together against Craig Forsyth here with 11 laps to go.
I imagine if they get the chance, they'd love to work together, but again, it's kind of one of those Kurt Busch, Kyle Busch things where you don't want to see your family win. Or let me rephrase that. You want to see your family win, but you want to see you finishing ahead of your family. You want to be the best.
Gale Brooks had a runner-up finish earlier on this season. Jim Brooks almost had the victory last year at New Hampshire. But either one of them get their first career win here tonight, they're going to have to defeat a former winner from this season, a former Indy 500 winner in Craig Forsyth, who right now might just be kind of creating a proverbial wall at over 200 miles per hour alongside of Julian Altena, not giving any lane available to Gale Brooks. Brooks, for the moment, doesn't look like he's wanting to mount any kind of a charge, content to leave about 2 or 3 car lengths between himself and the 27, but I guarantee you, these laps start to tick away. We get close to that checkered flag, that gap is going to close. He's going to pick his moment here, but I think it's just a little too early for the 71.
I'm just sitting here. I'm watching Gale Brooks right behind Matt Wagner, and I can hear Jim Brooks from all the way in his car, where he is just looking at Matt Wagner in front of him, saying, "Why are you in front of me? Why are you not letting me by? Why are you racing us?" And that's the thing where Matt Wagner has total right to be there. But obviously, as one of those cars in the top 3, and you know, or you think or you know you can make it, you want to go out and race. You want to go out and get up there. You don't want to be stuck behind a car, and that's kind of what you want everyone out of your way. You are angry at the world.
Oh, look at that right there, Matt Wagner. Oh, caution! Well, the trend continues. Late race caution. It's Luis Gonzalez Nunez on the back straightaway with less than 10 to go.
I just heard Matt Wagner just groan over chat.
Nunez was running 2 laps down in the 7th position. I saw another car that appeared to be slow back there. It might have been the 31 of Altena, but I believe he actually was on pit lane at the time. So we'll see if this was contact or if this might have just been a solo car incident. It was a solo.
Don't tell that to any of our leaders.
Nunez.
They may be hunting down Nunez after the race.
Oh man, he had his hands full there out of turn 2. Back
Not
end
for lack of
stepping out.
trying. He was
No,
trying his
certainly not.
hardest.
Reminds me a little bit of the incident he had back in New Hampshire when he drove it in deep. The back end of the car didn't stick. Ended up taking him out of that race.
See, here's
kind of similar here tonight, where the back end just wasn't planted there in that upper groove.
Here's my critique, and I said this actually earlier, how you overcorrect. And I kind of see that. I mean, if you look at Nunez's onboard in slow motion, you can see exactly where the back of the car starts to step out, and you see how he tries and fights it. You know, obviously, he saves it first, but he actually got the car back straight on the entrance to the back straightaway, and then he ended up jerking it right one more time, and that's what got it out of shape and head straight into that, straight into the barrier. It's kind of one of those things like this car forces you to really be on overdrive, and it forces you to work. But it can also force you into errors and simple things where, you know, and maybe a slower car like a Porsche or something like that, you would be more forgiving and you would know, like, oh, okay, the car is going to snap this way. Same thing like this. I think it was just too fast and he overcorrected.
What you saw there, the hand motion, immediately knew that that car was getting out of shape, doing everything he could to keep it pointed in the right direction, but overcorrects it into the outside wall. Now, Nunez had not used a fast repair up to this point, so he will be able to use one now. And a little bit of house cleaning. We had 4 drivers on the lead lap when that caution came out. Craig Forsyth, Gale Brooks, Jim Brooks, and Jari Brupacher. Forsyth and Gale Brooks decide to stay out. Jim Brooks and Brupacher come to pit lane. 5 drivers will be on the lead lap when we go back green, as Nick DeGroot, who was the first car 1 lap down, is going to get his lap back. And this restart's going to be with less than 5 to go. It's going to be interesting to see just how many laps we're going to have here. Maybe 3-lap shootout here at Kansas?
I think it's going to either be something like an unofficial green white checkered or kind of maybe a 2-3 lap dash like you said.
Remember, they do not have overtime here in the Dark Horse Racing Series, so we are only running 120 laps. We will get back green, but you gotta wonder, in the case of someone like Gale Brooks or Jim Brooks or Jari Brupacher, is, let's say, 2 laps enough time to be able to generate a run to get around Craig Forsyth? Because we know Forsyth's strategy is that's just going to be hug that white line. If they're going to go around you, force them to take the longer way around the racetrack.
I know many people wouldn't like this, but in my opinion, if I was in that situation where, listen, I'm in that elite top 5 group here, but has on the lead lap, I mean, it is literally bring me the trophy or bring me the steering wheel. I mean, we are sending it. We are sending it deep, and we're hoping it sticks because really this is our shot to win. This is how we do this. Now, Nick DeGroo's going to have a little bit of tougher time, at least to my knowledge. I think he ended up getting the free pass, so he's going to end up having to start at the end of the longest line. Now, the end of the longest line may be behind all of the lap cars. So that's going to be a interesting situation if he's placed all the way back.
But you talk about interesting. How about the interesting adventure of a race for one Craig Forsyth here tonight? First 15 laps of the race, he was airborne over the cockpit of the 31 of Julian Altena on the back straightaway, bringing out the first caution of the night. Now he is about 3 miles away from possibly claiming his 2nd win on the season.
It's funny how it works out, but obviously I think he's a little bit grateful that he took that fast repair so early on. But that's what I'm saying, where that fast repair, it makes it a very unique situation where I've known people who take fast repairs early in the race who are like, all right, I have to be extremely cautious. I mean, I don't have any other fast repairs. I don't want to wreck out of this race. But I know some people who get that fast repair and they're like, you know what? Honestly, I got nothing left to lose. I mean, I already got my free chance. I might as well burn it up. I mean, here's the thing. If I wreck, I wreck. If I win, I win. And I think that's kind of what Craig Forsyth did, where if I wreck, I wreck. I win, I win.
Could very well be right. Lights out atop the pace car. 2-lap shootout here at Kansas. Forsyth might have been playing it safe, but he was down on the apron trying to save some fuel here for this final 3 miles. Gale Brooks, Jim Brooks, Yari Brubacher all line up behind him. To your point, Nick DeGroot gets the free pass, but he starts shotgun on the field, so not a lot of time to get up and gain some positions here inside of the top 5. Green flag about to fly as Forsyth heads into the restart zone. Here we go. Who's going to be able to win it here tonight at Kansas Speedway?
You see Nick DeGroot slowly making his way up to the field. If he gets back up there, it is going to be something of a miracle.
Yari Brubacher around the outside past Jim Brooks, who might have spun the tires or just had a slow restart. He moves up to third. Gale Brooks jumps up to the top side on Craig Forsyth. He's going to get alongside him here in 3.
Seeing DeGroot just, he's sweeping his way through the field. Got out to Matt Wagner. Matt Wagner is a lap down, but still, he ended up still in 5th, but he is working his way up to the main pack.
Might have a shot at a spot on the podium here in the closing stages as Yari Brubacher moves up to 2nd. Gale Brooks back to 3rd. Brubacher now jumps to the outside on Forsyth. Can he get the side draft through 3 and 4? He's alongside, but can he stay there? Forsyth. Oh, Brubacher's got the side draft, but gonna be about a car length short. Craig Forsyth wins the Dark Horse 180 here tonight at Kansas.
Oh, man. DeGroot was making the Brooks sweat. They made them work for it.
They wrecked coming to the start-finish line. They wrecked after the start-finish line as well. I believe Teed was involved in the wreck coming to the line.
Oh.
Senna and Herrick, I believe, were involved in the wreck after the start-finish line.
You want to know how much fuel Craig Forsyth had as he crossed the line?
How much?
1.6 liters.
Well, there you go. Does he have enough for a burn now? Let's find out. Craig Forsyth going to join Matt Wagner as a multi-time winner this season. And Forsyth, who came into this race tied for 4th in the point stand, 62 points out. Granted, a big late race charge for Nick DeGroot, although it still finishes him in the 5th position, but this is going to be a pretty good points night for the 27 as he will make his way up there into the further up in the top 5. And I think that answered our question right there. I think he tried to fire up the engine for some burnouts. There was nothing left.
Hey, listen, all you need to do is get you past the finish line.
That's right. You can celebrate in victory lane. You don't have to do a burnout. The trophy's waiting for you.
What a race. And honestly, it is a shame that Nick DeGroot cutting up through the field wasn't for any positions, but he came from all the way back. I think if he had an extra lap, he would have actually gotten into the podium.
I think you're right for sure. Not sure what happened to Gale Brooks in the closing stages, but he dropped from 2nd back to 4th. Jim Brooks, who had the slow restart, finishes on the podium. Yari Brubacher, I'll tell you what, Brubacher, all of a sudden, that guy has caught fire. Had a top 5 run last week at Gateway, 2nd place run here tonight. It's his first podium of his Dark Horse Racing Series career. And Craig Forsyth with the victory. You look at some of these other guys down here. Obviously, Luis Gonzalez Nunez, 7th place, not the best of runs, but when you consider the fact that Matt Wagner and some other drivers that are up there in the point standings with him finished even worse, it's not a terrible points day, but it certainly could have been a lot worse.
Absolutely. It can always be worse. It's kind of one of those days that you take your lumps, you accept it. Obviously, Matt Wagner not finishing last. Hey, that's 1 extra point. It's not a great day, but hey, it could always be worse.
And you got to wonder here, too. You look at a lot of these drivers here that, like Craig Forsyth, Matt Wagner, Nick DeGroot, the wins are there. The wins are there for sure. But the consistency just hasn't quite been there for any one of these guys up there towards the top of the point standings. And as we know in the past seasons, it's that consistency that really helps you to be able to win the championships combined with the trips to victory lane. So it'll be interesting to see, as we still have a good chunk of schedule left to go, including next week at Pocono, if these drivers start to realize the consistency is key and we start to see these drivers finish up inside of the podium more often week after week. Well, let's see if we can get a word with our top 3 finishers, and let's see if we can kick things off with the guy that brings it home in the 3rd position here tonight, and that is Jim Brooks. Hey Jim, Seth and Matt up here in the FRN studios. You got us? I'll give it another go here. Jim's the guys up in the FRN booth. You got us? All right, it would appear that we do not have Jim available just yet. So we will certainly get a word with him in just a moment. We'll leapfrog and go to 2nd place. How about the runner finish here tonight for Jari Brupaker? Hey Jari, it's Matthew and Seth up here in the FRN booth. You got us?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yep, we definitely can. I'll tell you what, man, what a crazy couple of weeks. A solid outing last week at Gateway. Here tonight, 2nd place and a crazy restart at Kansas. Hey, what was the pressure like there on that final run? Because everybody, you could throw a blanket over them again, almost kind of like the initial start of the race. And this time it's for positions up inside of the top 5.
Yeah, that was wild. Just saw that I think it was Jim Brooks who was ahead of me. Didn't get a really good restart, so I went by him, and then I think it was Gale who was on the outside, coming to the line, or not to the line, but to the white flag, and try to get past Craig, but just like yesterday, it was really difficult to get past anybody when they were leading in that clean air, and so I'm glad I got 2nd.
Yeah, we're certainly seeing the 49 car trending up in the right direction, kind of getting the feeling that we might see it in victory lane sooner rather than later. But the big thing that everybody was having to deal with here tonight was certainly pit lane, whether it was trying to get onto pit road or dealing with the speeding police. A lot of drivers getting nailed for pit road speeding and losing a lot of track position. I mean, was that something that you focused on a lot here during the course of practice, and of course during the course of this week as well, to make sure that the execution on pit road was on par?
Yeah, I tried to nail down pit entry, but I don't know if you saw it, but I still spun it once coming to the first pit stop. That had me drop out of the draft, and got a little saved by the caution there at the end. But yeah, this is definitely very important. I saw several guys either miss their marks or being close to it, and you can gain so much time if you nail it right. But it's really difficult, especially with old tires.
All right, so looking ahead to next week, we head to another 2-mile racetrack, but this time it is the Pocono Raceway. So, what's the confidence level going in there after what's been a good couple of weeks?
I think I'm always strong at Pocono, so I've finally gotten that podium now, or so that pressure is off. Now I can go to Pocono and maybe try to get my first win.
Well, absolutely. Well, Yari, congratulations on the great performance here tonight. Kept it on the lead lap there at the end when it counted the most, and you bring it home in the 2nd position. We're now going to hand the microphone over to you for the opportunity to thank some sponsors and do some shout outs.
I just want to thank the people, everybody involved in the league. I want to thank the guys broadcasting you. I want to thank the other racers. Yeah, it's real fun to race the DW12 again. I haven't raced it in a long while.
That's Yari Brupaker, 2nd place here tonight in the Dark Horse 180 at Kansas. Once again, congratulations and best of luck next week at the Tricky Triangle.
Thank you. Bye bye.
So it would appear we did have him, as we were able to see him in the Discord earlier, Jim Brooks, but it looks like he has recently left. So it looks like we are not able to talk with our third place finisher here tonight. A little bit of an Easter egg. I ended up just finding out that the reason for the disconnection for one Matt Wagner during the course of this race, his VR shut off, so he had to restart it. So that being the reason that he finished multiple laps down, along with a culmination of other things, in the 12th position. But a guy who is celebrating victory lane here tonight is Craig Forsyth. Let's see if we can talk with him now. Hey, Craig, Matt and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
You betcha.
Oh, man, I'll tell you what. What a topsy-turvy race from start to finish for you. Airborne out of turn 2 in the beginning stages of this race, and then crossing the line to pick up your second checkered flag of the season about some 110 laps later. I mean, obviously, the elation has got to be there, but how about the relief as well? Because sitting there fifth in the point standings, a lot of guys in the top of the points having some issues here tonight. You're able to capitalize with bonus points and might have yourself a shot at that points lead heading to Pocono next week.
Well, it makes up for not capitalizing last week when I needed to dial it down and just come home. So not taking advantage of everyone's troubles last week was bad. So this is a good way to make up for it this week, that's for sure. But I've got to admit, I only got lucky. It was that caution was the only reason I made it to the end. I sputtered across the line. I think it was 0.16 liters left when I crossed the line.
Now, Craig, I'm in no hurry to go get a ride in Air Forsyth, but I do have to ask you, I mean, when you went airborne, did you think, oh, okay, the race is over. This is going to be fun?
I am shocked we went green. Having to burn that fast repair so early was in the back of my mind constantly. And then I think on the restart, we fell behind and having to burn all the fuel to try and to leapfrog our way back up to the lead pack. It was just, I knew the more I was burning fuel, the more aggressive I was going to have to be to try and get position. So I just got lucky, and with the pits cycling came out, with the lead, and I'm not sure how that happened, but I'll take it. And then it was just I got lucky with Julian ahead of me, was able to just dial it down and try and save as much fuel as I could for as long as I possibly could to try and hope for a caution. And I can't believe one happened. I'm gutted for Guile because that he had the fuel strategy. He went the 2 laps longer than he needed to go. He was going to have that one, and until the caution came out.
Obviously, the faster pair is going to become kind of everyday conversation in the following weeks, with it being a mainstay now for the rest of the schedule. But it was a main focus point here tonight, since the first 4 races of the season, you guys didn't have the faster pair to fall back on. I asked Scott this question before you guys even took the green flag, but I kind of want to go to a driver and ask the question. Did having the faster pair here tonight change how you approached this Kansas race, as opposed to if you had come in here tonight without having the faster pair to fall back on?
Not for me. I mean, I don't drive for, I'm a proponent of not having the faster pair. It's not how I drive. So I would prefer not to have it, but I understand why we do. Cause for broadcast races, you just can't have your field disappearing early on. It's not good.
All right, so obviously last week we saw Matt Wagner throw down the gauntlet, the first repeat winner on the season. You answer back here tonight, so the both of you currently tied with 2 wins apiece. Next week we go to Pocono. What's the chances that the rubber match ends in your favor and we find the 27 in the Tricky Triangle victory lane?
I like Pocono. I can't wait to get there. It's a fun track to drive, so I can't wait.
Well, Craig, congratulations on a great performance here tonight, a great comeback after the early adversity. You able to make it on fumes, as you alluded to there. Obviously, we said you don't have to have that burnout, just as long as the team's able to push that thing into victory circle. Congratulations on that. And now we're going to hand the microphone over to you for some victory lane. Thank you, sponsors, and shout-outs.
Thanks, guys. Got to thank Jim over at LMC Gear, main sponsor for the car, and all of you guys, and all the guys that we have sponsoring Dark Horse, ESTV, everyone. It's a fun little league to be in, and hope we put on a good show for the people that want to watch it, and anyone that wants to come drive it. We're on Wednesdays.
That's Craig Forsyth. He's your winner here tonight at the Kansas Speedway. Multi-winner here this season in Season 5 of the Dark Horse Racing Series. Congratulations, Craig, on a job well done, and best of luck next week.
Thanks, guys. Stay safe.
That's going to conclude our coverage here tonight from Kansas. And I think these guys definitely answered my question earlier on here tonight, Matt. Yes, we did have the faster pair in play here this evening, but this race trended exactly like the first 4 races of the season trended. The early yellow flag. We then went to a long green flag run. We had it come down to pit strategy. Some of our top guys in the point standings taking some hard hits as far as finishing position here tonight. And then the late race caution. I think we're now 4 for 5 in the week so far, with us having a caution in the final 40 laps of the race. And of course, it led to a in regulation green white checkered finish. I tell you what, with all this going on, with the way things are trending, I'm really excited for next week, a strategy race at Pocono.
Absolutely. And I will admit, even though it is a little bit controversial, I do enjoy the faster pair being back because it does add a little bit of unpredictability. I mean, look at the finish tonight. We would not have had I do not believe we would have had Craig Forsyth as the winner if there was not a faster pair.
Absolutely agree. How about some of these guys with the performances here tonight, though? Jari Brupaker, Jim Brooks up there in the podium for the first time this season. Jeff Heisong, another consistent finish. You just kind of get the feeling, yes, we're seeing Wagner, DeGroot, Forsyth, guys that we're used to seeing go to victory lane, getting the checkered flags here in the early portion of the schedule, but you just kind of get the feeling that some underdog stories are going to be written as we get further on down the schedule.
Absolutely. And it just gets better and better as we keep going forward. And I really think this championship battle is going to heat up as we continue on.
Well, we are going to be continuing on next week when these drivers head to the United States Northeast in the Pocono Mountains at Pocono Raceway. 3 entirely different corners that they're going to have to contend with. It'll be interesting to see who's going to be able to conquer the track known as the Tricky Triangle. Matt, it's been a great one here tonight, though, at the Kansas Speedway. I appreciate you stepping in here, the booth here tonight.
Absolutely. And I wish Scott a speedy recovery.
Absolutely. Appreciate him covering here at the beginning of the broadcast. Again, echoing Matt, hope that he's feeling better and able to come back next week. Thank you to all of you that tuned in here tonight. Hope you guys enjoyed our coverage. And again, be sure to join us next Wednesday night as we continue on the 5th season of the Dark Horse Racing Series presented by Troy Lee Designs at Pocono Raceway next Wednesday night with the green flag scheduled to fly at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But until then, for Scott Rankin, Matthew Rodriguez, I'm Seth Cole. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday night as you've been watching another broadcast courtesy of the Flat Out Racing Network.
This broadcast is the copyrighted work of Flat Out Racing Network and may not be rebroadcast, retranslated, or used in any form without the express written consent of Flat Out Racing Network and iRacing.com Motorsports Simulations. Flat Out Racing Network would like to thank you for your support, and we hope you enjoyed tonight's broadcast.